Hey everyone, when you hear the term conscientious objector, what's the first thing that pops into your head? Probably a single person, refusing to fight in a war because of their beliefs. But what if I told you that whole idea has been evolving? That today we're seeing a brand new kind of conscientious objector, one who objects not just to war, but to the entire system they believe creates war in the first place. We're going to trace that incredible journey from the battlefield all the way to the boardroom. And this slide right here just lays it all out. On the left, you've got the classic idea we're all familiar with, someone whose conscience just won't let them go to war. Simple enough. But look at the right. The new objector is thinking so much bigger. They're targeting the very gears of our world, the economic and political systems that they see as the real source of conflict. I mean, the scope of this is just massive.
So you gotta ask, how did this happen? How did we get from a personal choice not to hold a gun to a full-blown refusal to cooperate with the entire social and economic order? Well, to get that, we need to rewind the clock, way back.
To really understand where all this is going, we have to start at the very beginning with its spiritual roots. And those were planted more than 350 years ago by a group you've probably heard of, the Quakers. This quote from George Fox, the founder of the Quakers, is pretty much the seed for everything that comes next. See, when he was offered a military job, he didn't just say, no thanks. He said his whole way of life took away the occasion of all wars. Just think about that for a second. It's not about being passive. He believed real peace meant you had to actively get rid of the things that cause war in the first place. Greed, power, aggression. This idea is the bedrock for everything. Of course, having a spiritual belief is one thing, but it gets a whole lot realer when the government starts demanding you fight in its wars. And this clash between private conscience and public conscription kicked off a long, long history of resistance that just kept escalating. And this table shows that evolution perfectly. You see, during the Civil War, it was all about raw personal defiance. By World War I, things got more organized. But check out the jump in World War II and Vietnam. The target of the protest shifts from the battlefield itself to the bureaucracy behind it. It stopped being just about the act of fighting and became about the government's power to make you fight at all. Let's see what that actually looked like for the people involved. So back in the American Civil War, this resistance was incredibly intense and personal. A perfect example is the story of a man named Seth Laughlin.
Laughlin's story is just incredible. He's forced into the Confederate Army, but he refuses every single military order. He was tortured for it. They even hung him by his thumbs. Eventually, he's sentenced to death by firing squad. But as he's standing there, he starts praying for the souls of the men who were about to kill him. And the soldiers were so moved, they just lowered their guns and refused to shoot. That's the power of pure individual belief.
Okay, now let's jump forward about 80 years to another Laughlin. This is after World War II, and the whole idea of objection is evolving. The focus is shifting away from the battlefield and onto the paperwork, away from the soldier and onto the system.
And right here, this is the critical leap. Don Laughlin, who is a teacher, said he couldn't participate even to the extent of registering. Now that was a truly radical move. He wasn't just refusing to hold a gun. He was refusing to even fill out the form. He was completely rejecting the government's right to draft him in the first place. He was objecting to the system itself.
And what was the price for objecting to the system? 18 months. He and another teacher got sentenced to 18 months in federal prison. This just goes to show you, the government saw resisting the paperwork of war as just as serious as abandoning the battlefield. The stakes were incredibly high. This whole evolution just picks up speed during the Vietnam War with people like Jeff Kissling. By this point, the government had actually created an official conscientious objector status, a legal, safe way out. But for some, even that safe path felt like a trap. It felt like a compromise with a system they just couldn't accept. Kissling's logic here was really profound. He didn't see the official CO status as a win. He saw it as a kind of trick. He felt that by accepting this special status for himself, he was basically giving a thumbs up to the whole draft system that was sending other people to war. In his words, he'd still be part of the power. So he said no to the compromise, sent back his draft cards, and faced prison as a total resistor.
So this growing refusal to cooperate with the system at all, it forced activists to take a really hard look in the mirror. And what they saw was a deep, pretty uncomfortable contradiction right at the heart of their own work for peace. This was the big, shocking realization. For hundreds of years, their peace testimony was mostly about so-called white wars, conflicts between European nations. But at the exact same time, many in the peace community were benefiting from and staying pretty quiet about the daily systemic violence of things like colonialism and slavery. Their objection to one kind of war was actually a form of complicity in another. And this moment of critical self-reflection, well, it leads directly to the modern idea we're digging into today, a new, holistic kind of objection, one that doesn't just resist war, but the entire system of violence. So what exactly is holistic objection? Well, it's the refusal to play along with a whole interlocking system of oppression. It sees things like foreign wars, capitalism, colonialism, and domestic violence, like police and prisons, as all being different branches of the same toxic tree. You can't just object to one branch. You have to object to the whole darned thing. This new way of thinking is really built on three connected ideas. First, you have to resist colonialism and its legacy, which means supporting movements for indigenous rights like land back. Second, you resist a capitalist system that's seen as creating conflict through endless competition. And third, you resist state violence right here at home, which means aligning with movements for police and prison abolition. The core idea is simple. You can't have real peace over there if you have these systems of violence right here. It's all connected. And what's so powerful is how this new movement is intentionally using the language of the past. This modern statement says, "We conscientiously object to and resist capitalism and white supremacy." You see, they're taking all the moral history and weight of the classic conscientious objector and aiming it at a much bigger modern fight. So we've gone from refusing to hold a gun to refusing to even sign up for the draft, to refusing the entire system that creates the draft, and now to refusing the economic and social systems seen as the root of all conflict. It really leaves us with a pretty massive question. If this is the path we're on, what does it truly mean to be a conscientious objector today?